Bernstein, and I am here to answer all your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. So go ahead and throw your questions in the chat, and we will get to answering them. There's no such thing as a dumb question, so you don't got to worry about sounding ill-informed or uneducated. Anybody can ask anything. It's completely fine. Open experience. No one's gonna roast you for not knowing things. No one's gonna make fun of you or try to fight you or anything like that. It is just good faith answers to all your good faith questions here. My name is Jarrett Bernstein, and I'm here to answer your questions about politics. My expertise is really American politics, but you can ask about other countries. I might not be able to answer, but you can definitely ask if you like. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. I do not judge, I do not fight, I do not debate, I do not roast, I do not harass, and I do not bully. So anybody is welcome here, even if you disagree with me politically. You are still welcome here to ask your questions. Bro Brillington says, which party in the UK would you vote for? Probably either Green or Labour. Definitely not Restore, definitely not Reform, definitely not the Tories. Thank you for your question, Bro Brillington, and welcome. Welcome to the live stream, everybody. My name is Jarrett Bernstein. Put your questions in the chat. We will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here. Left, right, center, outskirts, extremities, whatever. Republican, Democrat, you're all welcome here so long as you're asking questions in good faith and you're not, trying to what do you call it? Yeah, trying to start nothing. Won't start nothing, won't be nothing. Shane Rainey, welcome to the live stream. Why can't social issues just be left up to the states? I guess because if we're going to have a United States, then it should be that you can exist in the same capacity in every single one of those states. So is there like a specific social issue that you think is currently being mandated federally that you think should just be left up to the states? So yeah, let me know, my guy. Welcome to the live stream, everybody. My name is Jarrett Bernstein. I'm here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. George Hamilton, what's up? Good to see you. Welcome to the live stream. Says, have you heard of HS2 in the UK? No, I have not. Okay. ADZ, welcome to the live stream. New to politics and live in the UK, however, studied many different regimes. How do I get into it? I would just say try to do a little bit every day. Try to read the news every day. Maybe find a podcast that goes through like a little bit of all the news, in like 30 minutes or something. And then, hopefully you can start to pick things up from there. There's definitely like a learning curve. There's definitely like a learning a new language kind of a thing. Rory says, big up Restore. No, Restore is a terrible political party. Do not vote for it. Do not endorse. LARPA GB says, what if Charlie Kirk was an alien and Trump knew about it and hired someone to shoot Kirk? That would be super weird. And I don't think that that's what happened. The Dawan says, should the Constitution be significantly altered? Oh, yeah, 100%. I think we have the oldest Constitution that is currently in use with like the fewest numbers of alterations. So 100%. Rory says, why are they? Well, because Restore and Reform are parties that are built on anti-immigrant sentiment. That is the philosophy of let's blame immigrants for all these problems that are caused by rich people. And so that's a lie. Like, immigrants are not causing those problems. There might be some like logistical issues with mass migration, but it's not the kind of thing that they're lying to. Like, Nigel Farage is lying to you about who the real culprits are and what the solution is to solve all these problems. What is up, Spyrus? Good to see you again. LARPA says, why would it be weird? I mean, why would it be weird if the president orchestrated an assassination on an extraterrestrial? I don't know. The Honest HR Director says, after last night's victories by the Socialists, I think it's time for the Democratic Party to split. I don't. The whole point of the Democratic Party is that it's a big tent, and so we can have the Democratic Socialists and we can have the more centrist Chuck Schumers. The Adawan says, are the UK Green Party bad? I don't think so. The American Green Party is bad, but it seems like the UK Green Party is with it. J4 says, the rising anti-Semitism, is it more Bibi's fault or politicians like Mamdani? It is 100% not politicians like Mamdani, but it is politicians on the right. Like, if you look at a chart of anti-Semitism, it starts going up around the time that Trump gets into office in 2016. Now, what does that tell you? I think what that tells you is that when you have people in charge who are kind of like openly embracing stereotypes and racism and bigotry, then you sort of like give a permission structure to everybody else to kind of go along with it. I think it's also not a coincidence that Trump has kind of like been at the forefront of this conspiracy theory, deep internet, there's no such thing as truth, blame the Jews for everything kind of thing. And Jewish people have been for a long time kind of like the scapegoats of every conspiracy theory. So if you're going to lean really hard into conspiracy theories, obviously Jews are going to start getting a lot more hate. I don't think that what Netanyahu is doing is helping. That is for darn sure. Yeah, I think AIPAC and Netanyahu are kind of like, unfortunately, leaning into the reality of a lot of these conspiracy theories, But yeah, I would not say that it is mainly Netanyahu, and it is 100% not left-wing politicians like Mamdani. User a whole bunch of numbers says, I see the nose, and that's an anti-Semitic comment, so you're out of here. Okay, Coraline Editor says, do you believe socialism would have worked in Burkina Faso if Thomas Sankara lived? I do not know nearly enough about that place and that person to get into that. So sorry. ADZ says, why do people with small capital sometimes become the biggest advocates for capitalism? Propaganda and misinformation. ADZ. These people have been told that their livelihood depends on the beneficence of billionaires, and that billionaires are good. They create jobs. They flood the market with great products, and that they've never done anything wrong in their lives. They've been told that the Republican Party is the party of good Christian Americans, and what the Republican Party does is talk about the benefit of having all of these billionaires be our kind of like, de facto kings and queens. And, if you love trucks and beer and football, then you vote Republican, and you shoot your guns, and you defend the billionaire class. That's kind of like, it's all kind of like wrapped up into this culture war that is paired with misinformation and propaganda being spewed by the social media channels, which are owned by billionaires. Sadamir Putin says, can you say free Palestine? Absolutely free Palestine. Tute says, would you rather live in a libertarian right country or authoritarian left country? Authoritarian left. Let's see here. AZ Desert Rider says, keep voting and dividing the country. That's smart. Voting does not divide the country, AZ Desert Rider. Please do not try to encourage people not to vote. That is not the kind of shit I allow on my live stream. I'm trying to get more people to vote. Voter participation in America is pathetic. And if I personally believe that if we got those numbers up, that we'd have a much better country. So let's for these midterm elections do something unprecedented, and let's get above 70% voter participation in America. AZ says, keep voting, dividing the country. Smart. All right, well, you just said okay, so maybe you're not going to do that anymore. We'll see. Daniel says, so all problems are the rest and not restore or reform. I don't know what that means. Nico B says, I'm a Dutch teenager and I'm already in a youth party. What would a way to get a job within politics? I mean, I don't know how it works in I don't know how it works where you live as a Dutch person in Holland. Yeah, here you just volunteer for a campaign and hopefully you can kind of like build from there. Okay. AZ says, you need to learn human psychology, bro. Are you really just trying to start a fight with me here, AZ? Because that's not what I do here. So just, I guess, stop, please. Coraline Editor says, any political parties like reform using immigrants as scapegoats should not be voted for. Completely agree. AZ says, no, it's the real problem of the world is the human behavior. I'm just annoyed with you, AZ, so I'm just going to go ahead and block you now. Broby says, who are you? What are you doing on my screen? Where am I? TikTok. My name is Jared Berenstein. Welcome, Broby. I answer questions about politics. Throw your questions in the chat, and I'll answer them. Cornishon says, you look like the singer of American football band. This is a compliment. There's a football band? I didn't know that. Foss says, what's your favorite political movement? Progressive Democrats. Critical says, are you left of center or right of center? I am left of center. Nico B says, opinion on liberal Democrats. They're fine. I don't really That's not really my wing of the Democratic Party, but they're definitely better than every Republican. All right, CB28 says, okay, he looks like some singer. We got you. Joshua says, Rep and Democrat, different sides of the same coin. Everyone should be a libertarian. No, Joshua. So a couple of things about that, Joshua. There are really big differences that happen in the country depending on whether Republicans or Democrats are in charge. The platforms are different. The politicians are very different. Also, the libertarian movement was created by the billionaire class, so they wouldn't have to pay taxes. If you want more specifics on that, let me know, Joshua. Michael Anthony says, most important Senate race of 2026 for Democrats? Probably Maine or Alaska. Tim says, what color is apple? I mean, depending on what kind of apple, it could be green or red, or there's other colors as well. Andre says, thoughts on Trump's immigration policies? Barbaric, inhumane, illegal. I can't say anything nice about them. The Nate says, did you read the 7 satanic church tenets yet? No, I did not. If you ever want me to research something when I'm not doing my live stream, you got to send me a DM, otherwise I'll forget about it immediately. I have a 2-month-old. Matt likes watches, says, thoughts on Israel? I am for the people. I am against the government. Tute says, do you think the fake commie countries, China, make many people turn away from leftism? Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah, it gives the right a really good example of it not working, and it kind of takes an extra step to explain, like, that's not real communism. If it was, it wouldn't be authoritarianism, shit like that. But I also think that we're kind of pushing on an open door here where because of, the Cold War and Red Scare propaganda and shit like that, the American people want to believe that communism and socialism is bad. Like, they are poised. They've been, they've had it drilled into their noodle since inception. So, since conception? Conception. So, yeah, having countries that are not really communist call themselves communists is just like a really easy way for Americans to go, yes, that confirms everything I already believed. Tim says, which month has the letter X in it? I don't think any of them do. Coraline Editor says, government should stop filling the billionaires' pockets and help out homeless vets instead. 100% agree. The Democratic Party does, but the Republican Party does not. Texmo says, you need a haircut. No, I don't. It looks dope as hell. Aw says, it's like North Korea calling itself democratic. 100%. Welcome, opposition. Super Kitty, welcome, says, guys, I know communism, socialism has never worked, but let's give it one more try. Super Kitty, it has never been tried, Super Kitty. In fact, I would argue that we see socialism and communism work in capitalist countries regularly. Like, it exists in America. It exists in Canada and in Europe. It exists in Scandinavia. It's just not totalitarian. Like, it's not, there's no capitalism, and it's not, there's no communism. It's a mixed system. All right, X-Dude says, why do you call it billionaire class instead of bourgeoisie? I just feel like it's the way we're describing those people now. If I describe the bourgeoisie, I think I kind of sound like a poet from the France in the 1960s. I don't think that people are really. I don't know if 100% of people know what that bourgeoisie means. The upper class society, It's the Rocketeer says socialism in my America. It's true. Search your hearts. Okay. Alrighty. Luke Mullivan says, Trump is the greatest president of all time. Who do you think is second? Trump is not the greatest president of all time. Arguably, he is the worst president of all time. Very likely the most corrupt. Very likely the most incompetent. All right. Jaden Evans says, what party do you support? Democrats. New Age Times. Welcome. Every crime Trump commits, guess what? It's Biden in a fat suit. What a weird thing to say. That's obviously not true. Jay Ship, good to see you again. Welcome. If you nationalize state-owned an industry in the USA, what would it be? Healthcare, first and foremost. 100%. Let's do healthcare. X-Dude says, okay, what do you think of Amadeo Bordiga? I don't know who that is. Just Adam says, I think people conflate socialism and social care and bread and circuses. That seems like a little bit of a stretch to me, Just Adam. Tim says, why do rich people like golfing? Because it's like an exclusive place where they keep out poor people and Jews. Jaden Evans says, do you know anything about British politics? The only thing I know about British politics is never vote Tory, never vote Reform, never vote Restore. Nigel Farage is not a good guy. Tute says, do you think U.S. should leave NATO? No, I believe we need to be creating larger partnerships, not leaving partnerships. Sneaky Burb says, what's a more pressing issue, global warming or mass illegal immigration? Global warming, 100%. Mass migrants are a net positive, so that's not really I wouldn't even call it a problem. Abdul Rahim says, who's better, red or blue or none? Blue. Jaden Evans says, who do you think you would vote for in the UK? Either Labour or the Greens. Coraline Editor says, do you think people who say only 271K were unalive instead of 6 million are brainwashed? I mean, are you talking about the Holocaust? Because, yeah, I would say so. I think it's pretty clear that it was in the millions, right? Okay, Danny Boy says, none is deaf better because none consists of no corruption or evil. But less corruption and evil is better than more corruption and evil, right, Danny Boy? Like, don't let the good be the enemy of the perfect, or don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, Danny Boy. Let's see here. A says, do you vote for reform from UK? No. Do not vote reform. Do not vote restore. Do not vote Tory. Abdul Rahim says, do you like Evan Newsom? Nah, he's like fine. He's like a solid B average politician. Just Adam says, the stretch for what? Social care is not socialism, but is the evidence used. I just don't think that people think about it that hard, just Adam. I think that the people who are against it are just using this knee-jerk anti those words, or they're repeating talking points from Fox News or whatever. All right, Danny Boy says, to me that sounds like quitting smoking for vaping. Yeah, that's better. If vaping is better than smoking cigarettes, then please vape instead of smoking cigarettes. And then maybe you can go on to the nicotine patches, which are also not good for you, but are better than vaping, right? You see how this works? Better is better and worse is worse. And then eventually you get to good, and then eventually you get to great. Abdul Rahim says, Mamdani thoughts. I love him. He's great. Mutter says, smokestacks were added to the top of the buildings after the war. Don't know what that means. Just Adam says, I am against socialism, but for social care. Why? Why are you against socialism, Just Adam? John Scarp says, thoughts on the new magnificent Air Force One. A massive waste of taxpayer dollars that are going directly into Trump's pockets. John Scarp says, thoughts on the murder of Metcalf. Don't know who that is. Sam says, what do you think are the problem of capitalism? The problem with capitalism is that it is a shallow financial model that does not take a lot of things into consideration. If the only thing that's important is shareholder wealth and profit, then you sacrifice things like humanity, where it makes me and my shareholders a lot of money if I use this old pipe to transport my gasoline, but, oh no, it exploded and a bunch of teens got killed. But if the legal consequences for that are less than the money that I saved, then I guess I don't really care about killing teens with my exploding gas pipe, shit like that. Flag War Production says, your thoughts on the political realignment of the younger right-wing voters. I mean, we're still in the middle of it, and so there's what happened before 2024, where the billionaire class and the right-wing talking heads and the Trump wing all kind of got together and started trying to radicalize young men against the left. And it was largely successful, of course. But I don't think that is currently what is happening. Like, that whole base has been fractured, where we have like the Tucker wing now, and we've got the Nick Fuentes wing. I don't think that the neocons are doing great with the youth, so we just gotta kind of wait and see. And I think that a lot of those young men who were tricked into voting for Republicans are kind of seeing what happens when you elect Republicans, and that is forever wars and rising costs and monopolization and high unemployment and concentration camps and, the military in American cities fucking shit up, and ICE acting completely illegally without any kind of oversights and incompetence. And so I think a lot of those people are being like, oh shit, like maybe all that stuff I was told was not accurate. Well, maybe I need to re-examine some of my priors. Abdul Rahim says, why does USA have two-party only? Well, we have an electoral system that makes it really difficult for other parties to get a foothold. Period says, W ICE, by the way. No, not W ICE. ICE is acting illegally, immorally. There's no nice things I can say about ICE, and they're not even doing a good job. Butter says, is it true that communist Jewish lads were the only ones you documented the Holocaust? I don't believe that's true. It seems kind of conspiracy theory-ish to me. All right. Sam says, why Millet seemed to have great result then? I have no idea. King Cobb says, thoughts on the statements made about Michelle Obama at the UFC? I mean, I really don't care if somebody wants to make a stupid joke about Michelle Obama being a man. This is a dude that gets punched in the head for a living, so I don't really care. Like I am going to use that information to create an opinion about that human being that is not good. But you know, he's got freedom of speech. He's allowed to say dumb things that make people hate him. Okay, H. Hoskins says, "Do you know about UK politics?" Only thing I know about UK politics is never vote Reform, never vote Restore, never vote Tory. Scott Clower says, "Thoughts on the Gordie Howe International Bridge Trump shut down because of Donor Buddy?" Oh, that's the first time I'm learning about that, Scott. Send me a DM. I want to look more into it. Philosophical Peacock says, "People supporting ICE are pro-state sponsored violence. How do they not understand this? Culture war, misinformation, and propaganda. My team are these guys, so these guys are doing great." Coraline says, "How can you justify ICE when they have killed many in captivity, like, for example, Nenko Gantchev?" I don't know who Nenko Gantchev is, but it is accurate to say that we have substantive evidence to suggest that there is a plenty of abuse going on in ISIS center facilities, up to and including sexual abuse and murder. Fabi says, "What do you think of Italian leader Giorgia Meloni? Respect for standing up to Trump, but she's pretty far right wing for my taste." So, as an Italian myself, I'm like, come on, guys. Like, I know we have a history of kind of like siding with the right, but can we just be like the fun version of Italians where we eat food and we drink good wine and we make love to women and we swim in the ocean, you know? I know it's kind of using a French accent there, but I've always enjoyed how Italy and France are kind of similar in that way of like, our whole thing is fucking and eating good food. And then the French are like, no, our whole thing is fucking and eating good food. I guess how we differentiate ourselves is that we're very pro-worker and anti-religion, and the Italians are like, mamma mia, opposite. I'm allowed to do that pasta face because I'm Italian. It's the Rocketeer says, "That was the most French Mario impression I've ever heard. Thank you." Sam says, "Do you think that for one billionaire you need a million poor? If not, why redistribution?" I do think that for one billionaire you need a million poor. If you do not treat money as though it is a scarce resource, then you have inflation. Ergo, if one person is holding $1 billion, that means that there's a million people who don't have any dollars. Okay, John Abbott says, "Why should we assume that people don't understand they are supporting state sponsored violence when they actively say they support the violence?" Yeah, you know, there's some people who believe that the First Amendment only counts if it's for them and the people that they like. And they're allowed to infringe on the First Amendment rights of people that don't look like them or that they don't like or that are saying things that they don't like. Okay, Kylo Ram says, "How is Trump doing as president?" Terribly. We're awful, corrupt, incompetent. He is trying to reign as a dictator, and he is governing like a racist, misogynist, and homophobe. Coraline says, "Who was neglected by ICE in their detention centers?" I don't have those names memorized, Coraline, but it is many, many, many people. Lots and lots of people have been dying. Lots of people have not been getting. Hold on a second. This guy goes, "Jew opinions." What a weird ass thing to say. Yeah, Coraline. But I'm happy to forward you all that information if you do not feel like Googling it yourself. Michael Anthony says, "First thing you would update in the Constitution." Oh, that is a hard one. I don't know. I don't know. I guess get rid of the Electoral College, probably. Something like that. Okay. Who? Oh, Coraline. Got it. I didn't understand that that was two sentences of the same thing. Kyler Ram says, "Thank God you agree with me following you." You can follow me even if you don't agree with me. I'm not here to fight people. I'm just here to engage in good faith on politics substance. Sam says, "Why did poverty drop in the last 100 years if money or value is a zero-sum game?" Um, uh, I don't know if that's accurate, Sam. Like, there are definitely times in America's past that there was more poverty and less poverty. Like, it wasn't just like a straight decline. Like, many people would argue that there was a lot more fiscal mobility in the 1950s and 60s when we had a higher top marginal tax rate and shit like that. Yeah, I don't think that you could argue that we're in a new Gilded Age where we are seeing the exact same problems as the Gilded Age with like high unemployment and high inflation and you know a lack of resources for everybody who's not a billionaire. Alrighty, let's see here. Adams Garden says MAGA is furious that Mamdani candidates won last night. Good. Fogwar Productions says electoral college abolition scares me as someone from a region with Greenland's population. Fogwar Productions, and I know that there's nothing but love between us, so I'm not saying that this is like you taking shots or anything, but I think that the electoral college isn't doing you any favors as somebody from a small region. The electoral college basically is a way for the election to only happen in 10 states. I don't know if you're from one of those states, whether your region is big or small, but if not, then nobody who's running for president gives a shit about your state or my state. It is only the 10 or 12 swing states that ever get visited or ever get campaigned to, and going to those states during presidential years is a fucking nightmare because it's just political ads everywhere. Every single TV commercial, every corner is just plastered. It's fucking annoying as hell, man. And so I don't know how it works out where you're from. Like, if we do the math, like, how much does your vote count versus somebody from California? But if you live in a consistently red or blue state, then you basically feel like your vote doesn't matter. I say, why don't we give the people who are Republicans in California their vote for president back? It seems only fair to me that if you're a Democrat living in Alabama, that we don't just throw your vote for president in the garbage, right? Okay, KMNM says, do you think Trump and Putin are connected? There definitely are. They have a history together. But whether or not he's like literally taking commands from Putin, I don't think that we have firmly established that. Michael Anthony says, how close are we to eliminating electoral college? I think you said a while ago we were very close. We are very, very close. We only need one more state to commit to the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, which is the mechanism by which we're going to get rid of the electoral college. And so if you live in a state that has not already signed up for the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, then you should 100% call your representatives and tell them that you want to sign up for the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. I actually do have a list of a handful of states that if you live in them, you can, call your people about. But I don't know where that is. Okay, yeah. This is not a comprehensive list. This is just a bunch of states. So Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, and New Hampshire. If one of those states joins the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, then the Electoral College is dead. It is done. Then we never have to worry about that ever again. The president will be elected via popular vote from that point forward. And so, again, but there are other states that have not signed up besides those. But those are just the ones that I was like, they caught my eye for reasons. Okay. No Name says, coffee or tea? I think they're both great. Mutter says, Western history books are wrong about so much except the World War II numbers. Don't know what that means. Riley says, we should paint Trump the American flag blue and see if he reflects. What a weird thing to say. Browning Athletic says, when's the next revolution? It's happening. I don't know why people think the revolution has to include things on fire. Like, I consider myself a part of the revolution doing these live streams. All right, Marcelo Manoheraro says, what do you think of Giorgia Meloni? Too far to the right for my taste, but good for you for standing up to Trump. KB says, what do you think of Keir Starmer's resignation? Probably necessary. Seems like it was the move. Coralinator says, not saying I liked him, but the people who hated on Biden are defending a felon, Trump. Yeah, I mean, I think that people can be really hyperbolic about Biden, usually in the negative direction. People definitely don't give his administration the flowers that it deserves for a bunch of really, truly incredible accomplishments that I don't think outweigh the support that he gave to the Netanyahu administration after it was concluded that they did war crimes. But still, the Inflation Reduction Act was a transformational piece of legislation that should have gained Democrats more power in government instead of losing it for them. All right, Ron obviously says, don't know politics, made civic nervous system, don't know what to do with it, don't know what that means. Ron, made civic nervous system. That's weird. Amanda says, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? Very, very, very infrequently. Bea says, do you like Maloney? No, too far to the right for me. TikTok motherfucker says, why should red state citizens have 4 times voting power than blue states? It looks like you're actually talking to somebody else. All right, next Jamer called me Harry Mack. I don't know who that is. Direct Luminosity says, Jarrett, let me make you more left wing. There's no reason a worker should be unhoused. Debunk me if you agree. I do. I agree that that there is no reason that a worker should be unhoused. And then, all right, so step 2 is what of people who become sick or old or lose their job? Debunk this if we can't have arrived at free housing. I mean, you're not pushing me further to the left than I already am, Direct Luminosity. I agree with both of those things. Goraline Editor says it's sad to see that the UK can't keep a prime minister for more than a year. The billionaire class be propagandizing. Chatsworth says the term is homeless. The term is I don't give a shit, Chatsworth. I'm not here to parse semantics. Poop Master General says, what do you think about, I don't know who that person is. Four Lane says, what are the pros and cons of immigration? The cons are it can be a strain on resources if a bunch of new people come into any place, be they from the next state or the next country over. The pros are that immigrants commit crimes at lower rates than naturalized citizens. They do the jobs that nobody else wants to do. They paint more into the tax bucket than they take out of in social services. They bring in cool new shit like dope new foods, and their culture is really fun to learn about, and new languages, and they bring in genetic diversity, so we don't all end up fucking, what do you call it, hemophiliacs with birth defects because we're so inbred. There's so many positives to it. Monkey Dan says, should it be easier to change the Constitution? I don't think so. Mutter says, communist economic leads to ugly, cheap architecture. You can't deny that, right? I do deny that. Fog War Production says, I'm from the Uinta Basin. If it was a state, it would be the second most sparsely populated in the U.S. I don't know where the Uinta Basin is. But again, I don't think that you need to worry about diluting your own political power, Fog War Productions. I think your vote should count the same as my vote. I think that seems like a pretty easy what do you call it? A pretty easy concept to get on board with, right? I know you're probably on team get rid of the electoral college, but I get it. I get what you're saying. Okay, Noxygen says the largest con in cultural clashing, inherently different value systems cause disagreement that can escalate. I don't know what you're talking about, Noxygen. Tech Memphis says encompassing every single president from Washington forward, which one had the most impact currently? I have no fucking idea, Tech Memphis. I mean, arguably, the current president always has the most current impacts on the country because they are the ones that are intimately involved in doing the things that are affecting people's lives. You could make an argument Reagan because he kind of set the stage for the Trump administration. You could argue FDR because it kind of created the foundation of the workers' rights movement. You could argue LBJ because of the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. Yeah, that's not really my area of expertise. And if I'm being honest, like I kind of don't really think that there's a lot of value to that discourse. It's fun, the same way that you could be like fan casting movies with different people. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, Birdie Elwaz says, dude, isn't Trump the one who tried to get out of Vietnam because of heel spikes? And yet, oh yeah, he was a draft dodger. He is a coward. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I don't know why we're bringing it up, but I agree with you. Correlated Editor says, what's your favorite movie of all time? I do not have one favorite movie of all time. I have a bunch of favorite movies. I love Seven Samurai. I love Interstellar. I love Parasites. I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I love Into the Spider-Verse. Captain America Winter Soldier is awesome. What did I just watch that was dope as hell? Yeah, I don't remember. I've been watching a lot of movies since I've been bottle feeding my baby. Okay, let's see here. Fog War Productions says the Uinta Basin is a region the size of Switzerland that covers Northeast Utah and Northwest Colorado. Fog War Productions, you're in the Utah part, right? And you don't have to admit that if you don't want to, but I thought we had talked about that before. Which, yeah, if you're in Utah or Colorado, no, Colorado's a swing state, isn't it? I can't remember if Colorado's a swing state or not. But anyways, if you're in Utah, then your vote is 100% taken for granted in the presidential election with the Electoral College. Waltarian says, between neo-libertarian phalangelism and tongue-tying secularism, what would you pick? But all of those are nonsense words to me. User a whole bunch of numbers says, what do you think about the problem of the moral authority of the state? Can you be more specific? Tell me what you mean by that. S1M says, right wing or left? Left wing. User a whole bunch of numbers. Did that one. Mr. Groove of Vicious Vinyl says, nice Kurosawa drop there. Thank you. I also like The Seventh Seal, which is just one of my two favorite movies that have the number 7 in them. User a bunch of numbers. I did that one. Dason says, should more corporations cater to the growing market for anime girl party pillows? You goddamn it, you get me every time, man. Fago Works says, I'm in the Utah side. Folks in the Colorado side have issues with Colorado's AG laws. Ooh, that is way more... That is made more in the weeds on ag policy than I am prepared to discuss, Fargo War. Ollie Stola says, your opinion on Donald Tusk, Polish Prime Minister. I have no opinion on anything about him. User a whole bunch of numbers says, do you think that the state has moral authority? I honestly, I've never thought about it. I don't think so. I don't think that the state gets to decide what is moral and what isn't moral. You know, I think that the state can sometimes legislate around morality, but I don't think that they have the authority to decide what is or what is not moral. Coraline Eder says, why do you think Bulgarian politics are so corrupt? Oh, I've got no idea about Bulgaria. Okay. Chatsworth says, how about Bill Clinton getting out of serving during the Vietnam War? He lied about the service. I don't know if that's true, Chatsworth, but I also don't love Bill Clinton, so... Bill Clinton's not president right now, so I guess it's a little bit less of an urgent issue to talk about which Democrats are draft dodgers versus which Republicans are draft dodgers, because the current president is a draft dodger who's also corrupt and incompetent and legislating as a person who loves racism and misogyny and fascism. Ollie Stolas says, your opinion on George W. Bush? Better than Trump, worse than Nixon. Not a good guy, not a good president. I think it's possible that his biggest sin was not really giving a shit and letting Dick Cheney do whatever the fuck he wanted, but I don't think that absolves him, even if that is true. Okay, user a bunch of numbers says, if the state has no moral authority, then how can they arrest you? I do not believe that moral authority is what gives people the authority to detain people that break the law. I believe that people create laws to try to have a stable society, and then we elect people and hire people to enforce those laws. I think what you're doing is kind of like a philosophical, like hook shot, like a bank shot kind of a thing. Wait, I don't think that the argument you are making is as much of a gotcha as you think it is. Ruby says, what do you think about the death penalty? I'm against the death penalty for a bunch of reasons, not the least of which being that we don't have a really great record of putting people to death who are 100% guilty. Even if we did, it's not a deterrent. Like, we have the data on that. So it's like, what's even the fucking point? Okay, Spaniard says, what do you think of New York's elections last night? I'm so excited. I am fucking hype as hell that all of these far-left candidates are doing so well. We have so much evidence now to show to the center-left to tell them, look, these people are better. The policies are better. The politicians are more popular. If you want to win elections, you got to lean in, man. Lean to the left. The water's great. Come on in, man. All right, John Abbott says, you should make a pass through the 80s and 90s military comedies. Can't beat Sergeant Bilko in the Army Now and Down Periscope. I've seen In the Army Now. I've seen Down Periscope. I don't know about Sergeant Bilko. Let's see here. The purpose of government is to mitigate the harm people do to each other, not to dictate morality. Morality is arguable. Harm is not. I agree with John Abbott on that and many issues. Okay, Ruby says, how do we beat the far right last elections if the left-wing parties like Lib Dems aren't big. I'm not really sure what you mean by that. I guess I would say, how do we beat the far left? Past elections, how do we far left last elections? I guess I don't know what you mean by the last elections because we don't really beat the previous elections. We beat the upcoming elections. Okay, user says, I am not saying the state has or doesn't have moral authority. I'm asking you, how can they arrest? I don't think that those are mutually exclusive. User, a whole bunch of numbers. Okay, Corleonator says, in my opinion, post-communist transition in countries caused a rocky shift to capitalism. Potentially enabling insiders to seize state assets. Yeah, I'm open to that argument, Corleone. Basics guy says, best leader of all time in your opinion? Oh, I don't know about all time, but in my lifetime, I would go Obama. Ruby says, sorry, typo. How do we beat the far right in the next general election? So that is a really good question, Ruby. So here's the thing. We got to recognize what our weaknesses are and what our strengths are. One of the weaknesses that we have on the left is that we are not in control of the information environment. The information environment is fully in control of the billionaire class, and where they can, they push that to the right always. So if you are, working for like the New York Times, which is supposed to be, unbiased, the billionaire class that own the New York Times will push it a little bit to the right, as far right as they can go, and still maintain the aura of prestige and unbiased coverage. But then you also have things like Fox News and Breitbart and OAN and social media, which is heavily utilized by the billionaire class to push people to the right, to convince people to either vote for Republican politicians or not vote at all. So we cannot rely on the internet. We cannot rely on the news. We cannot rely on those to be the mechanisms of getting that message out. There are exceptions, like, you get very successful Mamdani candidates out there who are really good at putting out videos and shit like that, but generally, that is not going to work for most people. There are a lot of other Mamdani-like candidates who have lost their elections because they were not able to pop on social media the way that he did. So what do we do instead? Well, that is where our strength comes into it. Our strength is that there's a lot more of us than there are of the billionaire class. Triska and Aaron, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. So we talk to each other in real life, not online. We talk to people that already know us and love us and respect us, our friends, our family, our coworkers, our neighbors. And we make sure that they are not currently believing anything that is inaccurate, any misinformation or propaganda. We make sure that people are prepared to vote and that they want to vote and that they're excited about voting. And then we do the more aggressive things like putting political pressure on our representatives and business leaders and organizing and recruiting and convincing. There's a lot of work that needs to be done out there. And if we all do a little bit of it, then we win. That's it, and it is in our hands. A lot of people are like sitting on the sidelines being like, oh, the Democratic Party can't do this. The Democratic Party is really bad at that. The Democratic Party does not have the resources or political power to do this by themselves. And I know that's a controversial thing to say, but the Republican Party has such a massive both financial and information advantage, and they currently are in control of every lever of power in the country. So we got to do the work. We got to help them out. We got to get out there. We got to get out there and talk to people and, recruit, organize, convince, protest, strike, boycott, etc. Okay, I hope that answered your question. Ruby, let me know if there's any more you want me to get into on that. That is one of my favorite topics to get into. What can we do? NR says, why don't you like Restore Britain? Because now research finds veterans ain't being housed, but illegals are, is probably what I think you were going to say there, NR. The reason why people are unhoused is because billionaires hoard wealth, end of story. If there was no billionaires, then that money could go into people's pockets, or it could go towards the government actually building more housing to bring down housing costs. Immigrants are not simultaneously buying up all the houses and taking up all of the government assistance programs. Like, Reform and Restore are lying to you about immigrants causing these problems. They are lying to you. They are lying to you. Nigel Farage is lying to you. It is not a real thing. The billionaire class have all of the resources, and so they use those resources to convince you that the people who are actually ruining your life are immigrants, people that don't look like you. But these billionaires, they got the same skin color and they're from the same town or whatever. And so part of us wants to believe them instead. And they have the biggest mouthpiece. You know, the immigrants don't have a mouthpiece to counter all of these arguments. So yeah, short version, don't vote, do not ever vote reform, do not ever vote restore, do not ever vote for Nigel Farage. He's the reason why your fucking economy sucks because he got fucking Brexit done. Remember, right? Am I wrong about that? What's up, Mikhail? Great to see you again. Hope you had a nice time in Finland. Okay. User a bunch of numbers says restore is great. That is not a question. Either ask a question or you're going to get booed. Actually, no. It's the Rocketeer already. All right, we're good. Shay Correll. Good to see you again. Welcome. If I agree with some aspects of the Republican Party and some aspects of the Democratic Party, am I an independent? I suppose. You could also call yourself a centrist. But what are the issues that you agree with the Republican Party on? Because my philosophy is that there's nothing good in the Republican Party platform, in the history of Republican governance, things like that. Fat Local Raccoon says, do you agree that we have made it inaccessible to be healthy? I do not agree that it is inaccessible, but there is a high degree of difficulty to being healthy, especially if you live in a food desert. And that is completely intentional. Like, if you are driving across the country and you stop at any gas station, like, the food that is available for you is crap. Living in a car-centric country as opposed to a public transportation-centric country means that we are walking less, which is less healthy. So you have to join a gym or some shit like that. So yeah, it is purposeful to make it harder so that you suffer healthcare consequences, so that you're desperate. You know, it's the same old playbook. Andre says, do you align yourself with Marxism? I do if it is workers owning the means of production. I don't if it is the government telling people what jobs they're allowed to do. Vault says, in your view, is the UK bound to have a better place on the international stage post Starmer's resign? You know, I don't know. The fella who looks like he's going to be taking over for Starmer in Labour, I forget what Burnham, Andy Burnham. People like him a lot, but he hasn't really articulated a vision or a platform going forward. So I think it's possible. I think we're probably in a better position. Y'all are probably in a better position now with Burnham than Starmer, but I can't tell you what's going to happen. That's for darn sure. 312MQ asks, what is Trump's housing plan? Trump's housing plan is, if you're wealthy, you can have a house. If not, you should go die in the streets. Alri says, are you a communist? No, I am not a communist. I'm not a capitalist. I'm not a socialist. I believe in a mixed model. What is up, Andre? Yes, love from Italy. My Italian brother, Il Vento Fischia ancora. My family are the Donicis. We came from just outside of Naples. User a whole bunch of numbers says, you really believe politicians run anything? Yeah, they do. They run the government. Some dude says, do you think a union can sometimes go against the public good, and how do we deal with that? Excellent question, some dude. It is true that the union has a history of corruption and overextending. Where any kind of bureaucracy or hierarchy is concerned, there is a worry about whether the people at the top are going to become corrupt. And I don't know how you immediately solve that problem besides just making sure that the union votes for better leadership going forward, or maybe the union needs the kind of oversight that we normally have in the government, but Trump fired all the inspectors general, so now we no longer have that. Shit like that. S.E. Morgan, great to see you again. Welcome. Did you see Trump isn't going to sign a bill to lower costs for most Americans? Yes. So Donald Trump is not going to sign the housing bill because he wants the Save America Act to pass, which is a massive voter suppression bill. So it is more important to Trump that him and Republicans win elections than you be able to afford a place to live. It is more important for Trump to be able to steal elections and keep people like you and me from voting than it is for you to be able to feed your family. We've known this. We've known this for a long time. The dude only gives a shit about himself, and he doesn't care. He would kill every single one of you if it meant he could be king, dictator. Here's the thing. If Trump owned an airline and he could get richer by crashing every airplane and killing everybody on board, he would. If name an industry, if Trump owned a chalkboard factory and he got richer by making chalkboards that fell on top of teachers and students and killed them, he would do it. Okay. Mata says, what do you think about the Italy prime minister? Way too far to the right for my taste, but kudos to her for standing up to Trump. Ruby says, do you think a main problem is that people follow a party leader rather than their policies? Ooh, that is a really good question, Ruby. I think that there's an argument to be made for both sides. And where I come down on this is you should vote for the person in the primary, but vote for the party in the general. Because if you don't like the Democrat that won the primary, getting that Democrat elected is still going to help the Democrats that you do like in other districts and states. And I believe that following the policy is a really good mechanism for that. Like, whose platform do you believe in more? Vote for that, even if the standard bearer for that in your state or region is a Democrat that you don't care for. So yeah, I do think it's kind of both, Okay. Ember Flame says, Trump's still alive? Darn. Pieces of shit tend to live forever. How about that? Okay. NR says, is abortion the new hollow? No, I do not believe that abortion is a Holocaust, because I do not believe that fetuses are people. Okay. Let's see here. User a bunch of numbers says, where do trillionaires come into these politics? Everything negative about billionaires, worse with trillionaires. Okay. Stephen Peterson says, would you consider the Walmart rotisserie chicken to be healthy? It's only $5 for a good price. I don't know. I have no idea how they cook it. I have no idea if it's organic or full of pesticides and antibiotics. I got no fucking idea. Austria says, what do you think on AI and sovereign wealth funds? So good questions. AI is a very complicated issue. I am bearish on AI. I am confident that the crash is going to happen soon. I am confident that this technology still has a lot of bugs that need to be worked out. And so all these companies that are planning on replacing all of their employees with AI are going to have a very rude awakening, because in addition to being flawed, it is also extremely expensive to run these data centers. And so the freemium model that a lot of these AI companies have been utilizing is really coming home to roost for a lot of these companies, where these companies have been like, just use AI for everything, use it for everything, use it for everything. And then they get a bill now that says, oh, we had to change the exchange rate for the tokens because it was using up so much electricity and capital. And so now you owe us $20 million. And the companies are like, whoa, if we had just kept our employees, that would only be $5 million. How about that? So yeah, data centers also need to be regulated so that they're not taking up all of our fresh water, so that they're not subsidizing electrical costs by having my insurance and my energy costs and your energy costs skyrocket. And they should not be hoarding all the wealth. If they do end up being profitable, which is an open question still, then they should not be the ones getting all of the financial benefit, because they train their model off of everything that we, the people, have created, of every movie and book and article and email and text message has trained these AI models. Ergo, we deserve a cut of that. Sovereign wealth fund could be a really good idea because the Republican Party has consistently cut taxes for the wealthy and giant corporations. We are not in a position to have a sovereign wealth fund because we do not have a budget surplus at all. I am also extremely skeptical of the Trump administration being wielding something like that, because they're just going to throw that money in their own pockets. End of story. WS, was 9/11 an inside job? W first said, is 9/11 an inside job, as though it's currently happening. But no, I don't think it was. But I could be wrong. Ruby says, which current project would you cut funding from, and where would you invest the money? I first of all cut funding for ICE and CBP. They had their budgets increased 300%. They do not need that money. Sell all the fucking detention centers and force the military to pass an audit. I'm not saying we need to cut their budget right now, but force them to pass an audit. Otherwise, they do not get any more budget increases. Okay, and invest that money. Universal health care, free public college, socialized housing, social safety net programs, strengthening the unions, lots of good stuff. Okay, Gloggle, not a spaz, says, do you do UK politics? I don't know a lot about it. All I know is never vote Reform, never vote Restore, never vote for Nigel Farage, never vote for the Tories. All right, somebody who has no screen name says, what do you think about communism and should it come back? If communism is the workers owning the means of production, then I'm for it. If communism is the government telling me which jobs I'm allowed to do, then I am not for it. I think that people have a weirdly totalitarian view of financial systems, where financial systems often are mixed model economies. Like, even in America, we already have some socialism and communism. I just think we have a little too much crony capitalism right now, unregulated crony capitalism, and we could use a little bit more, ergo socialism and communism, to even that out. Tim says, who is winning the World Cup? The same that always wins the World Cup, the fans. Okay, John Abbott says, I guess it's easy to live longer when you don't have the stress that comes with caring about other people. Too true. I joke about this sometimes where, me and my wife, we have this 2-month-old that I'm just like, God damn, this would be so much easier if I did not give a shit about whether this baby lived or died. Like, how quickly would I have just fucking left if I didn't care? My life would be so much easier if I didn't have a baby, But obviously caring about people is the reason why you have rich lives, Like, I would take my life over Donald Trump's any fucking day, because caring about others is what makes your life incredible, It does make it harder, but harder things are better. Many times harder things are better. All right. Sorry for that little tangents there. Just talking about how much I love my wife and baby. Alrighty. Mateo says, what do you think about fascism? I'm against it. Tim says, how would you feel if you have a breakfast this morning? I already had a breakfast this morning, Tim, and it made me feel amazing. Davink says, what do you think about Pedro Sanchez's politics? Don't know anything about it. Daniel says, do you think the National Guard could help improve Chicago? I don't. I do not believe the National Guard is trained in stopping shootings. Honestly, I think the best thing you could do to stop shootings in Chicago would be to have better gun laws in Indiana and all the states that are surrounding Illinois, because that is where all the guns come from. Because Illinois has really strong gun control, but people just go across the border to Indiana and they get all the guns that they want and they bring them over to Chicago. Okay, scrolling up. Thank you, D. I appreciate that. Okay, let's see here. Lele says, only Nigel can save the UK. That's a block. Daniel says, I already did that one. Okay, scrolling up. Polska says, I'm a Marxist and I think all the rich should be executed. Well, I don't believe in violence or the death penalty. How about instead, nobody's allowed to have more than $500 million, Polska? That seems like a good compromise, I think. Okay. Scrolling down. Bradley Baldwin says, democracy isn't the best solution. We have been trying for years, still not working. I mean, arguably, it's been working, Bradley. I am happy to give you a bunch of examples of democracy working. GHB True says, thoughts on reparations. I think they've already been paid through SNAP. That's a little racist, don't you think, to suggest that only black people use SNAP benefits? GHB Truther. Jersey Rican says, I wonder why you can't keep a prime minister. I mean, because the Tories are terrible and the world is unfair to left-leaning politicians. Local Proletariat says, democracy works when people don't pay attention to who they're voting in. That is generally accurate. Local Proletariat. Bradley Baldwin says, please do. I will give you plenty when it's not. I don't know what that means. I do not know what that means. All right, so the suffragette movement, the civil rights movement. Let's see here. Nixon resigning. The Inflation Reduction Act. The FDR. The New Deal. Yeah, there's just a couple examples for you, man. All right, Rodrigo says, you can't implement the 500 million maximum democratically. Sure you can, Rodrigo. Mikhail says, in Finland, which is the only country in the world that takes care of you if you become homeless, they have near zero homeless level. Oh, I would love to do that here. Mikhail meme sounds like a great thing. Okay, Jersey Rican says, what are your thoughts on socialists winning in the primary? Can they win in November 2026? I believe so. We have to remember that the billionaire class is extremely powerful, and they're going to do everything that they can to make it so that these more left-leaning candidates are going to lose. So we have to continue doing the work. We have to continue helping all these left-leaning candidates to win in the general election. Now, it looks good because a lot of the places that they have been winning are kind of like blue strongholds. Like when Mamdani won the primary, it was much more likely that he was going to win the general. But we still have to do the work because the billionaire class will not stop. They have so many resources that them, doing everything they can to stop these socialist candidates, that doesn't even fucking. You think they have to go one day without having lobster because they spent $20 billion trying to lose Mamdani his election? They didn't even fucking feel that shit. They don't give a fuck. Okay, Jersey Rican says, I don't sway far left. Sorry. You don't have to apologize, Jersey Rican. Why do you consider yourself to be in the middle? I would love to talk to you about that. Bradley Baldwin says the suffragists had to protest to get any form of change and didn't even have the right to protest. They did have the right to protest, Bradley Baldwin. That's the reason why they weren't thrown in jail for that. That is a win for democracy because the people who wanted to get the votes to be in charge needed to allow women to vote. Otherwise, they would not be able to get the votes to stay in charge. Okay. Crystal says, what's your ideology? I'm a progressive Democrat. Okay. Bradley Baldwin, yeah, I just don't buy what you're selling. Not even a little bit. I'm sure that if you decide that anything that I say that's a win for democracy, you can try to spin it in a way that's not a win for democracy. So I guess you just missed me with that nonsense. You're not going to convince me. Ferdy says, why doesn't communism work? Communism does work. And every employee-owned company is doing great. And that's communism, as far as I see it. All right, everybody, we are at an hour. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all of the... Hold on a second. Bradley Baldwin says, a fact is a fact, though, my friend. LOL. Congratulations. You're annoying. You're out of here. I love the support that you guys give the show, be it in your comments, your likes, your shares, or your fiscal gifts. If you want to support the show financially, you can. It is a big help. If you do, you can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a super fan on TikTok. You can be a subscriber on Twitch. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can be a subscriber to my Twitch channel for free. Costs you $0. Helps me out a ton. HM says, do you talk about British politics? I know very little, but you can ask if you like. Jersey Rican says, because they have damaged the Democratic Party and need it create their own party. I don't think I agree with that, Jersey Rican. Like, don't you believe, as I do, that the Democratic Party, their strength is in them being a big tent, and they have the far left, and they have the center left, and they have the African American caucus, and the Latin American caucus, and the Jewish American caucus, and the LGBTQIA caucus? Like, do you not view that as being substantive? I'm also not really sure why them. I don't know that it's accurate to say that they've damaged the Democratic Party. I think many people would argue that the centrists are the ones that have damaged the Democratic Party. And I'm happy to go into more detail on that too. Yeah. I don't know. Hold on a second. Jersey Rican says they are a lot of W lefties that are very racist. I don't know if I agree with that, Jersey Rican. I don't know if there's more racists on the far left than there are the center left or the right. Yeah, that just doesn't make any sense to me, Jersey Rican. I would love to chat with you more about this. You are welcome here, even though we don't agree on everything politically. Let's do it. Okay, HM says, thoughts on the British political party Labour. One of the good ones, I would say. I don't really throw my hat behind any specific political party in the UK. I would say the Greens are good, Labour's good, but I will say that no human should vote Tory, no human should vote Reform, no human should vote Restore, and Nigel Farage is a con artist and a liar. Okay, Jersey Rican says, what happened with the election? Tallarico and Jasmine in Texas, one example. I don't buy that Tallarico's campaign was racist. I don't buy it. I've seen the reporting about it, and I think that that's not a real thing. Like if there's a specific thing that Tallarico's campaign did that you think was like below the belt to undermine Jasmine Crockett, like I'll hear it, but like I just don't believe that that's a real thing. I've heard that rhetoric. I think that's rhetoric that was born on the internet, on social media. But looking at both of their campaigns, it seemed all pretty above board to me. All right, Jay Ship says, can having the state temporarily own oil production every 10 years for 2 years benefit taxpayers' U.S. debt? You mean, are we talking about socializing oil production? I mean, I think an argument could be made that this land is our land, and so the oil that you extract from it, we should get a profit of that. So yeah, I don't know if we need to dictate the specific years of ownership of that. I am open to a system like that. I am open to American citizens getting more profit from resources that are extracted from the land beneath our feet because this land is our land. Okay, let's see here. Jersey Rican says, Keith Edwards, one person of many. I do not know who Keith Edwards is, Jersey Rican, so sorry about that. If there are any questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream, please do not hesitate to reach out. I want to be a resource for you. I want to be a resource for you to be more informed and more involved in politics. Excuse me. So if there's any way that I can do that, please reach out and let me know. Use me and abuse me. Use me until I'm all used up. DMs are open. You can hit me up via my website. Link is in the bio. You can also reach out to me via my Discord channel. Link is in the bio as well. The Discord is a great resource, great community there. There's recommendations for books and podcasts, and also for civic actions that we should all be taking. We all need to do a little bit of work to get out of this fucking quagmire that we're in. And if we all do a little bit of work, then nobody has to do a lot of work. Let's see here. What else? There's also, you can also join my Patreon if you want to support. For as little as $1 a month, you can join the Patreon. There's also a really fun incentive at $10, though, if you are interested in that. Okay, the Wasm Ghost says, thoughts on tankies? I guess I think there's a spectrum for tankies. I think some of them are like, pro-voting in a way that I think is really productive, and some of them don't believe that it's a revolution unless things are on fire. I don't think that that's productive at all. These sort of like politicals are concerned, one of my biggest litmus tests is, are you trying to get people to vote? Because if you're not, or you're doing things to subtly undermine the idea of voting, then I think you suck. Like, full stop, And that goes for the entire spectrum of people that are trying to get you to not vote. So that's people that say things like both parties are the same, and you shouldn't vote because voting means that you're complicit in a corrupt system and other things that, and other inaccurate things like that. But it's also Hassan Piker going out there and saying that if Gavin Newsom is the nominee, then he's just not going to vote. And I'm like, that is a wildly irresponsible thing for somebody with your platform to be saying, Hassan. Alrighty. Okay. Anything else? Yeah, I know it's rough out there, so just do the work. That's the best way to feel better, is just to do something to try to help. HM says, thoughts on reform and Nigel Farage? Terrible. Both of them. Terrible. Do not vote for. Jersey Rican says, I always vote. Do your research and pick the best candidate in the Democratic Party. I agree, Jersey Rican. But don't you think that the best candidate can sometimes be the far left? Like, don't you think Mamdani's doing a great job? Okay, Mikhail asks, how do centrists damage the Democratic Party? So I'm not talking here about, like, theoretically. I'm talking about in practice. In practice, a more centrist Democrat is going to have more connections to financial institutions. They are more likely to have a super PAC. They are more likely to take money from right-wing funders like AIPAC or the billionaire class. They are more likely to be dogmatic about supporting Israel, even as organizations are concluding that they are guilty of war crimes. I think that those sort of like appeals to money and an older style of politics makes people believe that the Democratic Party is full of shit. But I think that there are some people who are scared by the far left for other reasons. Odin's son, great to see you again. Welcome. Do you think more bipartisanship between parties would be detrimental or beneficial to the country? So, the issue with bipartisanship is that if one party is psychotic, then trying to negotiate and compromise with them is only just going to make what you're doing worse. I am against this bipartisanship for bipartisanship's sake. If my position is that nobody should get stabbed, and someone else's position is every Jewish person should get stabbed, then the bipartisan solution would be like only half of the Jews should get stabbed. Like, that's kind of the tactic that the Republican Party has been using for the last 50 years, is moving so far to the right that compromising is actually the position that they want. So yeah, I'm generally against that. Rex Perry says, what do you think about reform? I am firmly against them. Nigel Farage is a liar. Jersey Rican says, cannot be bipartisan with madness presently. I generally agree with that. All right, everybody, I'm going to head out of here. Thank you again for all of your support, your likes, your shares, your gifts. Your support is what makes it possible for me to continue doing this show. And so do the work, be good to each other. You don't have to be a dick to do the work. Hold on a second. I want to check something out here. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. High performance. Let me check that out. That's what I wanted to see. All right. I'm looking at this live performance here metric thing. I think it's giving me who are like my top contributors in the live stream today. I think this is both comments and coins. And so a very special thank you to Triska, Carmine, and Michael Anthony. I really appreciate that, guys. Alrighty. Anything else? All right, everybody. I will see you tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care. Have a great Wednesday. Bye-bye. Goodbye. Goodbye.